Not that I can see.
Great. Are you ready? Okay, please be aware if you're attending this meeting, our meetings are recorded for future viewing, and we are privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakwaka'wakw. We'll call the meeting to order and ask, are there any additions or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, can I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 4A, minutes of the February 8th, 2022 regular council meeting. Are there any corrections or anything? And if not, have a motion that they be adopted as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, moving to correspondence 5A, we have an email from the Vancouver Island Down Syndrome Society to request for support. There's two items on here. One is that every year communities across the globe have lit in blue and yellow, the awareness colors recognized for Down syndrome. That's one. And then the second one is proclamation, which we actually don't do. So what's your pleasure with this request, council?
Move, receive, and file.
Favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, we have 7A, which is our Chief Financial Officer oath of office. And I will ask our CAO to lead our CFO, Brenda Johnson, in her oath of office, please.
In the key of B, please.
Okay.
In the key of B. Anne Marie, can you take a picture? I don't have my phone with me.
Thank you. Just want to thank Brenda for joining our team. Done a great job so far, especially under the pressure of budgets and the timelines. And now we'll get you officially sworn in public in the presence of mayor and council. So if you could just repeat after me, and at the end we'll sign the document and make this official. So this is the oath of office for the Chief Financial Officer. I, Brenda Johnson, having been appointed to the office of Chief Financial Officer
having been appointed to the office of Chief Financial Officer
for the town of Port McNeill, do hereby promise and swear
for the town of Port McNeill, do hereby promise and swear
I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially,
I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
execute the powers, duties, and functions of my office.
execute the powers, duties, and functions of my office.
I will treat all matters and information that come to my attention as a result of my office in confidence.
I will treat all matters and information that come to my attention as a result of my office in confidence.
I have not received, nor will I receive or accept any payment or reward or promise of either in return for the exercise of my powers, duties, and functions other than as permitted by the municipality.
I have not received, nor will I receive or accept any payment or reward or promise of either in return for the exercise of my powers, duties, and functions other than as permitted by the municipality.
I will not allow my personal interests to conflict with the duties of my office,
I will not allow my personal interests to conflict with the duties of my office,
and I will comply with all policies and directives of the town of Port McNeill and comply with all laws.
and I will comply with all policies and directives of the town of Port McNeill and comply with all laws.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Congratulations.
you very much and welcome to the team. All right, we have 7B, which is our fire department operations report. There was a correction, there should be a correction there. Current annual total should read 15, not 128.
Caught that?
There's no questions, a motion to receive and file is in order.
Moved.
Here, second.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. Next, we have item 7C, which is our report to council from the Harbor and Visitor Center staff report. I believe we have a harbor manager online if there's any questions.
I was going to say receive and file.
Seconder for that motion. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Rebecca for being here. Next, we have item 7D, January 2022 checklist.
Move receive and file.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, item 8A, we have our procedure bylaw, number 708, 2022. I would like to ask council I'm bringing forward for reconsideration on item 2.1, number 3, where it says the member chairing a council or council committee or commission meeting may participate electronically, but must participate with video capabilities, watch and be seen, if the majority of members are participating with video capabilities. All of council at one time, this is the motion I'd like to make, is to change this to all of council at one time may participate at a council meeting under 5D1 and should be on camera whenever possible. And the reason that I'm bringing this forward, there's been a lot of discussion around transparency, and I think that this would aid in the transparency of our local government.
I'll second it.
Okay, for discussion.
I don't believe we have the authority to compel people to turn a camera on. I'm against this.
Well, it says should be on camera whenever possible. So, you know, that leaves some discretion.
So if someone doesn't comply with that, what's the recourse?
Go ahead, Councillor Downing.
I think we have to assume the proper intent. This is just a suggestion. So if somebody does or doesn't, only that person knows their motives or the reasoning behind it. You know, it's not meant to be divisive or to stir anything. It's just speaks to what it is.
So it's a bylaw with no teeth. There's no, I guess I like to see less is more when it comes to government. So if we're going to put a clause in, we need to be able to do something about it if it isn't obeyed. We can't do anything about this. This is just a coercion, you know. It's not, it's because it's actually difficult for us to set a bylaw in place that compels people to go on camera. And I don't see why we should make a bylaw for something we can't enforce anyway.
Well, that's something I'm sure later we could capture in our code of conduct. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. So I would like to ask for third reading of bylaw 708, 2022, procedure amendment with the amendment that was just voted on.
I'll move that.
Seconder,
Second.
any discussion?
Sorry, which bylaw are we voting on?
We only voted on the amendment to that section 3, and so now we're voting on the third reading of the bylaw in its entirety with that amendment.
And this is the entire bylaw here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That, yeah, well, not the entire
Wow.
bylaw. This is the amendment.
Where,
to add
Okay, so where's the rest of it?
Online, but this is the procedure. When we make an amendment, this is how it's written. That's how our other amendments have been done to the procedure bylaw. So we don't rewrite the whole thing. This is an amendment bylaw.
Got it.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Item 8B, harbor bylaw. Rebecca is here for this as well. So there were a number of changes that were proposed. Council did ask for certain key areas to be defined and reviewed by the Harbor Advisory Group. So on this particular page here, you will see this, on page 27 and 28 and 29, this is what was brought to us last time. But there are additional recommendations to be included on page 33 from the Harbor, coming out of the Harbor Advisory Committee. And that is section 2.2 and 2.3 to remain as written in the bylaw. Section 2.4 and 2.5 to be amended to, and then it lists the rates for transient and Fort McNeil resident and winter rates. And section 3.7 in relation to 3.6 be amended to, and then it lists the liveaboard price as well as the annual rates for federal. I guess let's tackle the recommendations from the Harbor Committee. Thoughts on including them?
I guess the only thing that I really agonize about, I don't know where they got the rates from for liveaboard moorage, but we're not charging enough. When somebody could live on our dock, they pay maybe $100 a month or 120 a month for their boat, and they pay another 100 a month for hydro, all of which will be consumed by them. So it's zero, it's a net zero for us. If they were in our campground, we'd probably get $400 a month. And they're on our dock, which is far more costly for us to maintain than our campground. And yet we're only charging them barely $200 a month. So I think we have a problem here. And we need to make the liveaboards not just attractive for the people, which it should be, but also attractive for the rest of the town, so that we're not subsidizing somebody's rent such a high tune, because we really are. And
So one thing I didn't understand, and it might just be because I didn't think about it, they get charged a yearly, and then they get charged per foot moorage on top of that. So what the Harbor Committee recommended was that the lump sum payment is actually going to be enough to cover the hydro. You can't make money on hydro. So, but it's going to be, in the past, it's been under, because they're drawing, if anybody was going to draw the max amount of hydro, it would be them. Then the moorage goes, and both of those have gone up. They're grandfathered. There's only two down there. So this may have them move on, or they may take the increase, and then there's no more liveaboards. So then that drops off the bylaw, because there's no more liveaboards.
if I may say, I don't think, my objective is not to eliminate liveaboard. My objective is to make it attractive so that we can actually earn some money with liveaboards. But doing this, we're not earning any money.
Well, we currently don't allow liveaboards.
I understand that, but if we're gonna grandfather them in, they should still be paying a fair price. And I think we should be looking at making a profit on our dock. And this doesn't help us make a profit when we rent out that space for, in Victoria, for example, you can stay right across from the Empress Hotel for $700 a month in your boat. So.
But we're not
they're-
losing money. We can't charge them more than what hydro is. So
It doesn't have to be for hydro, it's just moorage, just live aboard fees. It doesn't just have to include hydro. Hydro is only one aspect of it. We also provide year-round water, we provide a sewage pump out, we provide the docks in a working state, and that all costs money.
And the moorage for them did go up as well.
Sure.
It did.
But we're going 200, 700. We're a little low. That's all I want to say. And I don't know that it's another conversation whether we're going to have liveaboards going forward. I understand that.
Mhm.
But if we're going to have them, I think they need to pay their way. And I don't believe that you're paying your way when you're only paying $1,000 a year and really nothing for the privilege of living on our dock 24/7.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? So, do you want to make a motion then to?
Can I make a motion to, what do we need the motion to say? We're including,
In bylaw 709, 2022, to include the recommendations on page 33 from the Harbor Committee.
so moved.
I'll second.
Second, okay. Further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion is carried. And, okay, over to the bylaw 709, before I read it out with the additions that we just mentioned. Are there any rates or any questions that you have pertaining to the rates that were suggested from the last couple of meetings? Okay. So seeing none, can I have a motion, please, to give third reading to bylaw 709, 2022, harbor rates amendment with, to include also the sections that we just
Amended.
amended with the amendment from the committee's recommendations.
All right.
Second for that? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
It's funny, we had these in backwards order
Sorry.
in the agenda package, they're backwards.
Thank you very much, again, Rebecca, for being here. 9A, we've got harbor upgrade report. So on this here, I looked up the two motions that we were looking for was motion 43, 2022, which asked for the status of the fish cleaning surplus funds and plans for use for those surplus funds. And motion 62, 2022 was to present an estimate of the cost of a fishing float and its location, and it was within 30 days, which I don't believe we've hit that yet. We do have the cost, we do not yet have the cost of the fish cleaning station. But we do have the budget that was unspent, valued at 21,000. So what's your pleasure with this, council? Do you want to wait till we get the other information, make any decisions, or? Because we still need to be presented with an estimate of for costs for a fishing float.
Well, may I ask a question, Mayor Wickstrom? You said there was a surplus of 21,000.
That's correct.
That was after the cost of the fish cleaning float was calculated in. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Right. So really what we need to know, and what I'd like to know, which I asked for before and wasn't presented, was how much is a fish cleaning float costing? Because we'd agreed as a council around this table that we would take the surplus funds after the fish cleaning station was moved onto the existing float. And if there was extra money, we would build a fishing float. So children would have a place to go with their parents and fish. So 21,000 is what's still left over. What's this fish cleaning float costing us? So I'd like to just move that we spend whatever amount of money it takes to build a fishing float.
Well, I believe we had this discussion at the last council table, and we had left it to staff that the fish cleaning float was part of the overall project.
It wasn't. We did not vote on that when we voted on the project.
Well, we did talk about it at the last, and we did have I believe those minutes, if you can look, there was a motion made and it was Have to go,
It was defeated.
yeah. So, and then the subsequent motion that came out of that was to present an estimate of the cost of the fishing float and where the location would be.
Right, so we're still waiting for that. So
Yes.
I'm sure what we're looking for now.
That's a good question.
This was just bringing
Brought it up.
back,
Trying to figure out where you're going.
Information. Yeah. And that other report will be forthcoming. And then we can make a decision. So receive and
Receive and
file.
file.
Yeah. Seconded.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
may I just speak to some? The reason this came back is because at our prior meeting, the motion did not state what the surplus funds were. And now the reports come back with the addition and telling us what the funds were. So
Well,
that's why this came back. So just,
I'd like to have the last word on that. What I asked for, because I'm the one that asked for it, was what were the surplus funds before the fish cleaning float was decided to be built by staff? That's the number that we need, because that money would have been used to build a fishing float and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
okay.
So why don't we get the actual facts, which is how much was left over when staff decided there was enough to build a float to put the fish cleaning station on, which we didn't agree to as a council before last meeting.
But I believe we voted on that. What was that motion?
You voted on it at the last meeting.
At the last-
Yes, you did.
Yeah, no, but on the topic that you're talking about, do you have that motion handy, CA Nelson Smith, by any chance? That was defeated?
It's in our minutes.
Who second defeated staff present council a cost estimate of the fish cleaning float?
So I know that that's what you asked for, but as a council, we had decided to focus on this one.
I didn't bring it up at the last meeting. I brought it up the meeting before, just so you know. And it was agreed that they would deliver it, but they didn't.
Thank you very much. Item 9B, Economic Development Plan. So this is from our Economic Development Manager, and this work plan was the one that was told that would be updated and represented to council. And I see that our Economic Development Manager is here, and I'd like to ask council if you have any questions. And if you don't, then a motion to receive and file is in order.
So moved.
Second for that? Do you have any questions?
My question is nitty gritty, so I don't know if it's something I'm supposed to ask or not supposed to ask. I just have concern that if we're doing a large focus on developers and builders, which we need, I don't have an issue with that, but I want to know that the policies and procedures that we have in place for applying for a building permit, a zoning, whatever it is, that those are maybe had a look at. And I don't know if that's already kind of underway or, like I say, it's a very nitty gritty. But it just seems like if we're going to get people coming in and building and we don't have a package, a full process of how you do business in Port McNeil, then, and maybe it's all there and it's perfectly perfect. I've never started a business in Port McNeil, so I don't know. I've never applied for a building permit, so I don't know. But again, I don't know if it's too nitty gritty for this plan, but that's just something that concerns me.
Go ahead, Councilor Downey.
I think that for me, I read the report and, housing has got, housing challenge costs, construction costs. We already know that. Accommodations, yes, we know it's a challenge. Seniors looking to sell and move into other things, we know it's a challenge. All of that is our housing problem. So, it's broken into four categories, and I wonder if I'd like to see broader goals and bigger objectives. And I wonder, did our ED receive the housing report, the regional one?
Question was, have you had a look at the regional housing report?
through the mayor. I have read that housing report and it's a little bit dated, but what I tried to do was condense in what versus a regional housing report. I wanted to focus more on the Port McNeil housing report. And so I did focus in on specific areas so that I could be more informative to council. I wanted to make sure I answered all of your questions. For example, the planning end of it, all of that has to go through the proper hoops. I would have to meet with Pete as our planner. I'd have to meet with Julian as our public works manager. That is, in my opinion, that is a given to any kind of development going forward. I have read the housing report and I was hoping this answered some of their questions. And I also referred to the OCP so that I knew I was not way off in another field, that I was focused on what the official community plan was aiming at as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, you have a question?
I'm just thinking that I like the fact that there's some focus happening on housing. It's just great. Certainly it's a precursor to getting some more people into the town. That's a good thing. I like the fact that in the census when it came out, we're flat. We didn't go down this year, which is kind of cool, which means the trend may be reversing. And that's a good thing for us as well. The thing that concerns me is we don't have development cost charge policy and bylaw in place. And I believe that we need to get our ducks in a row and we need to do it too sweet. I don't know what we're waiting for. I'm not sure. But it needs, I believe it needs to float right to the top of our priorities because people are going to come and they're going to want to build and we have nothing in place and we can't charge them. We can't instruct them to do things that we could do had we had that in place. And that means that the existing residents in Port McNeil are going to be paying for the infrastructure in front of that property, sidewalk, roads, who knows, right? But can we control when somebody decides to develop that CD1 area? What are we going to have to cough up for? Because we don't have development bus charge bylaw in place. We need to get that done.
So, refer to our CAO. Does our new zoning bylaw not state that when developers are building that they're responsible for the sidewalks and so forth?
Thank you, Mayor Wickerstrom. It's not our zoning bylaw, it's our subdivision development bylaw, which was implemented in 1997. That is very specific instructions by developers. And even just residential home builders are responsible.
And so in the past then, where we see areas where there were no sidewalks, it likely wasn't implemented?
That would be correct.
And so when the new motel went in, how much did we get, or did we get anything in development cost charges for that development?
Through the chair. So the difference is development cost charges are charges for any infrastructure that needs to be built to accommodate the volume of the increase. And you're correct, we don't have a development cost charges bylaw. We do have a subdivision development bylaw, which requires them to put infrastructure in front of their property. Whether it be road, sidewalks, water, sewer, storm sewer, but development cost charges are for the anticipated increase to, say, our wastewater treatment plant, our water reservoir, our wells. So the capital costs involved with it.
Right, and do we have that bylaw in place?
Now, did you not reach out to McElhenney on this question? And what was their reply?
It is something if we're going to continue moving forward, that council should look at it.
So I'd like to, is there a motion on the floor? I think there is. It was to receive and file.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I do want to say thank you to Marilyn for the document. It actually is crafted and it pinpoints the areas that are a priority for the town. I think I probably my ignorance, what this is and what I'm thinking are two different things. So I will just anxiously await and see what your follow-up reports do bring for us. So I do appreciate that that this identifies the key areas that have been pointed out that are necessary for our community.
Through the chair, thank you very much.
And if, I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving and file, opposed, carried. Can I ask you to hold on to your motion because I think it fits into strategic priorities because
It does.
it is in there and you can raise it at that time. Would that be okay, Councilor?
That would be fine. Thank you.
Right, which is the next one, rolling right along to 9C, strategic priorities. So Councillor Barron, who was chairing that meeting, grab us all to make sure that we set in our strategic priorities. And you will see them captured in ranking on page 51 and 52. And that was based on our input. There was a couple of things that came to light for me when I was reading through this, and likely the rest of council, is there definitely are two sets of strategic priorities here. There's strategic priorities that are staffs, such as policies, like the bringing them forward to us on our policy development, bringing them forward on a regular basis, project reporting, those kinds of things. I don't really think it's in council. It's what we would like to see, but it isn't necessarily a priority. But when I look at the ranking for council, it came up strong in the community development area, which I think we all recognize to be a very high priority for us. So two questions. One, do you feel that this captured our intent? I'll ask that question first.
No, not for me. I was surprised when I saw it, actually. Quite surprised. And I'm referring to this document here, the blue and yellow. Yeah.
I can't, Mayor Wickstrom, I can't really figure out what the priorities are from all this.
Probably echo that as well.
So in ranking order, if you go to 52, housing came up as number 1. The CD1 zone Mosaic, also a high priority. And Mosaic, which has to do with the campground. Development cost charges was number 2. Analysis of moving the office to the old school and owned land. I'm assuming that where it says Mosaic, that was CD1 development?
I'm assuming it's private owned forest.
Right, yes. It doesn't mean that, that perhaps 6, 7, and 8, core certification is very, very important. I guess
Are we going to move maybe to committee of the whole to discuss this, or are we going to
exactly,
be?
because that's what I was going to say, because I believe that some of these, housing, for example, needs some.
I'll motion that we go into committee of the whole.
I'll second that.
To go in
Or
right
and
now.
the revote.
Yeah,
Okay.
right now.
In favor? It's carried. So we're into committee of the whole.
It's just freer speaking without
You don't have to make motions. and defeat
motions
them.
to talk about things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so,
yeah.
I mean, I was going to suggest that we commit, what I see here is that where it says housing, that's great, but it really needs some headings. Like, what does that mean? Seniors housing, packages like you were talking about to hand out to developers. Do we have, everything that we need to actually welcome somebody who's looking at building housing, planning, so on and so forth? Like, I really feel that there are subheadings that go to this that would make these priorities a lot more meaningful to staff and knowing which direction they need to go where these areas are concerned.
So I think I look at it differently, clearly, because housing, we have an economic development officer who is undertaking that, and all those bullets that that you just mentioned, those all are part of that, and we did see some of that within her report that she presented to us. I see we have Mosaic taking up 3 placeholders here, CD1, zone Mosaic, the Mosaic campground, and then if you throw in owned land, we've got them taking 4 placeholders. And the reality is, you know what? That is one. That's a phone call. That's initiating relationships and phone calls and inquiring about status. Those are not 4 separate things to be worked upon. And if that's, that's my personal thought, that's a phone call in a relationship. In our past council, the mayor delegated that to a councillor and said, would you please make contact and go and find out what the lay of the land is on these particular properties. And then that person reported back to council. Unfortunately, just the timing, we've got the campground, we've got a number of issues and our OCP was not current. Zoning bylaw was not current. So, you know, it wasn't a great time to really pursue that much further. And they've had their own changes within their own organization as well. So for me, all of those are one lump, and that might even go under to the ECDEV person to make those calls, or the CAO. I don't, you know, whoever makes that call, the mayor, it's a phone call and in a relationship that needs to be initiated. And I say that because the other one I want to bring to mind here is that the property that we have down on the waterfront that we purchased from Western Forest Products, when they were making their changes, I contacted a couple of people within Western Forest Products. I just made cold calls and said, what's happening, what's going on, got the lay of land, took some notes, and I went to the mayor and I said, Mayor Fernie, I think, you know, that is an asset that needs to be held in by the public, by the residents of Port McNeill. This is what I've learned. And then he just carried on from there. And we now own that property on the waterfront. So these things start with phone calls. So to have staff, you know, to have those as 4 separate things doesn't, it means that things like course certification, it means like the subject that we discussed in our in-camera meeting earlier, those aren't even on here. And to me, those are sincere priorities, and maybe those are, you know, staff. Well, we'll talk about that after, but we do have other things that the fish float isn't even in here. It's a budget item though. It is.
If you look on page 52, it's ranked in there with the top 10
Number 9. Yeah.
projects.
Yeah. So anyways, that's my thoughts.
Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
It's just not, I don't know, there's 4 sections there. I guess it's too confusing for me. I just need one list. I thought we made one last time and we just took it and sort of shuffled the deck and we ended up with 4 lists.
Well,
I don't know.
no, there's 4 lists, and that were, I think, the projects, foundation, and community development was your, Karen, was your sheet process the information. But the list we're really looking at is in ranking order, and that's at the bottom of page 52. That's ranked 1 to 10.
There you go.
I'll go back to risk. So we have governance, we have regulatory. Anything to me that fits into either of those 2 that's on this list is there because it's not where it should be. So in a way, it's, to me, it's not a strategic priority. It's a giddy up, let's go. The campground is supposed to be, we're going to open it. So that to me is right now in this quarter, a strategic priority, because we need a plan. We need to know that we're going to have an opening date and we're going to be able to go. The Mosaic relationship or Couverton is kind of over here. I don't know if you call it tactical and not airy fairy, but you know,
Phone call.
it's something that just needs to kind of be running simultaneously. The summer staff, again, to me for this quarter, that's a huge, and all the staffing that we have now, you know, like the human resources really aside from the governance and the legal, that is where staff's attention needs to be going. I don't think, I mean, the projects are the projects. Julian's gonna have his head in Beach Drive Slide, knocking on doors because that's what needs to be done to keep that project going. Those projects already have timelines. I'd like to see a project timeline, I guess, like for the campground and for our summer staff. And then in addition to that, the other one. The rest of them, I think will kind of, I mean, like we keep talking about development cost charges, but we don't know. Maybe the CFO already has identified that that's something that she wants to get to. And let's face it, governance has put her into, I would assume, getting the budget done. So maybe that's like hot on her list. Maybe there's policies and cost charges that haven't been looked at in 10 years. Maybe she's already kind of building that list so that when budget's done, she can go off and do that. I don't understand how having a 1 to 10 list in this environment right now, because we're half in the old way of doing things and we're half into the new way of doing things, and we're trying to figure out what makes sense to do things. I don't understand how having a list of 1 to 10, and I think that's probably making it harder, and that's why we're getting this, shift around. I mean, I think, like I say, staff's attention needs to be governance, meeting legal requirements, and then those projects that are on board that have already got a timeline, keep that timeline going. Let's get it to completion. Those other 3 that I mentioned, give us a timeline, get them going. If we have some phone calls with Mosaic and Coubertin and something starts to move, well, then that's a project that then gets a timeline and gets to get going. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
I think that sounds like a good way to explain it. I mean,
So what I hear you saying is that, and I would agree that there are already a lot of projects and initiatives that are underway. For example, I believe in our budget, we're already considering the fishing code. We've already asked to assess the old school and what it could look like and what the cost would be that would help for the next phase. There are some things we're already doing. And as I believe Councillor Mitchell, you mentioned last time, we have to be cognizant of the fact that staff, like Julian, for instance, is going to be maxed out at certain projects right now, certain large projects, and now anything we add on ends up being a liability. So I think what you're hearing say is that these strategic priorities are new ones, kind of muddies what's already going on and underway. Is that correct?
A little bit, and some of them definitely click in. If we did get a little bit further with the town, the old school, and that was, a 2-year project that was going to happen, well, that kind of takes off maybe the outdoor bathrooms, and like there's other, but there's not outdoor bathrooms, but
everything starts to change. Everything shifts.
It starts to pull kind of some of those other things that are fringy, if that makes sense. So.
I kind of just suggested maybe out of this list of items, we could find 5 that we want on our strategic priorities, not ranked, just on the list. And then perhaps we could maybe add something like this water project that seems to be coming at us from the side. Is that a priority for us? And if it is, it's not on here anywhere, not even talked about. And yet it's going to turn out to be a huge project and quite a large amount of money. But we don't have it on our list anywhere. And yet staff is putting time in on it, and our engineers are working on an application, and they're asking us to put up $330,000 to fund it from our own capital. But we don't have it on a list anywhere. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. So the development cost charges to me is really important, and I'm glad to see that it's on there. We need to get cracking, because if we're going to do housing, we're going to ask for people to come in and pour money into our community and put loads on our infrastructure, cause us to spend $1.5 million on a water system, upgrading it, right? We got to have some way of recovering some of that. That's what development cost charges do. We're talking about our sewage treatment plant's going to have to be updated in the next 5 years. I heard that at the last meeting from Julian, I think. And so that's a huge amount of money that's going to be coming out of our coffers. Development cost charges are going to cover that. They're going to help cover that. So I believe that should be floating somewhere near the top of our strategic priorities. Because we're looking at a huge amount of development in this community in the next 10 years. Huge. because the pressure's on.
And that-
It's not gonna let up.
That's where,
Cost $1 million for an acre of land with a tiny tear down house on it now in the Comox Valley. Like, things have changed.
that's where not really having a clear plan from the maintenance and like public works, like, I mean, Julian may have been looking at knowing that this water was kind of on the burner. He could have been 5, 10 years, and then this grant application comes up, so it gives them an opportunity to jump on it. But it was already kind of like
Sure.
that's what's hard for
It's
me,
floating
because
in the
I'm a
background.
planner, and I like to have a kind of a full, and I don't feel I have enough of that. And then exactly what you just said just happens. It kind of comes out of left field for us, and we're going, well, hey, we thought we just, you guys, as councils, you spent a lot of money. Why are we doing this? But because we don't kind of have the staff input, that makes it difficult.
Before Councillor Downey comments or speaks, I just want to make a comment. So I think having a CFO in place now and the fact that we have asked for 5-year projections is going to help us with that, what's on the horizon. The other thing that I just wanted to say is there is this, which is council priorities, but I believe that staff needs to be able to come to us to be able to say when a priority rises for them and have the opportunity to tell us the reasoning why. So there's a balance between what we would like and also what they feel is necessary. One quick thing, that project we were already planning on doing it, but because an appropriate grant came, is it kind of like the active transportation plan that it would help pick up some of that tab? Yeah, and I think that is going to be remedied with a proper 5-year capital plan. First, Councillor Downey.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've talked about development cost charges. Instead of getting it done, we've put it on a list. We've talked about it for 3 months. Why don't we make a motion asking staff to present us a development cost charge bylaw? Period. And then that's just done. They have resources at their disposal that they can beg, borrow, and steal from and adapt for our purposes. It doesn't have to be labor intensive. We do have a deputy now to assist our CAO. We do have manpower, which we didn't have before. So I don't feel bad asking for that. We're in a committee of the whole. I'll make it out when we come out. So.
Any further discussion in this committee of the whole? Okay, so motion to adjourn the committee of the whole and go back into the regular meeting.
Seconded.
Favor? All right, so do you have a motion now? From the conversation?
I would like to motion that we ask staff to present us a development cost charges bylaw for consideration.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I would like to ask the mover if she would put a timeline on that activity. So we could have it within, because we're looking for development to happen soon. We want the bylaw to be in place, which takes another month after we pass it, after we agree to do it. So we need to get cracking on this. So I'd like to see a timeline.
Yeah, and to be fair, I did consider that. I was thinking, within 60 days-ish. I'm a bit reluctant too, because I understand that staff is dealing with budgets, and that is a priority that has to. So
60 days I can live with.
yeah, I'm just saying I'm unsure about putting that on there, because I think
could we-
staff can manage their time as well.
This is something I would like to get the calendar. simply be a phone call tomorrow.
Okay,
That takes care of it.
well, then we'll move it up to 45 days then.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
All those in favor? Opposed?
So do we want
So,
similar coming out of this list? Or
very simple.
we've just taken something off that list and got it done.
The only thing I didn't see was the motion on the screen, and I want to make sure that it ended up the way.
Oh, well, maybe he could read it back, if I may. Could it be read back?
To ask staff for development cost charges bylaw to be presented within 45 days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connor.
Well, the campground, can we have a plan for getting opened up and what needs to be done? Roger?
I think, yeah, some of the other items are just further on.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm thinking the old school we motioned previously at our budget
Yeah.
meeting. The,
Certification, I think we're gonna be on our way.
yeah,
I know.
housing is taken care of.
Bullying harassment, we actually, that should be coming back to us. There's a municipal quick one that's written. Fishing float, we already talked about within the budget.
The Sandy dump for right now.
One that and I don't know if it's here budget, but the beach drive water access, because we're heading into summer, possible ground crew or somebody who can operate a backhoe just to clear out an area where people could launch canoes and park. Takes it out of the harbor. I have kayaked into this harbor. You have to be very careful because you're dodging boats and ferries and such like that. And so it would be nice to have a different pullout area in the community. So,
I agree with that. No place in the harbor to get out of the water.
well, there is, but you're dodging a lot. I've done it.
It's a very busy harbor.
Yeah. So would that be appropriate, Mrs. Mayor, for where would we?
Make a motion, do whatever you like.
Well,
Supported it.
Is that something that we can ask Julian to let us know
If it would be.
if
feasible.
it's feasible and if dependent on summer staff? I don't know.
Okay, maybe I could speak with Julian and bring a report back for next council meeting then on that specifically.
Just asking staff, did you hear enough from us to understand the direction that we're going? Meaning that it's fairly steady as she goes with the few items that we're already working on.
You can get her, but I don't think I've ever been happier than.
Thank you. Great, moving on, which I forgot to actually add this to, but was presented an addendum in your package, was the Magdalene water report. Oh, sorry, no, lies. We have the continued use of the community hall for our meetings. So there is a report here from staff, just talking about all the different options, putting the chambers back to the town office, the community hall, and also at the old gym. And there was a page that was left at our desks here that actually gave the costs involved in having each of these at venue, each venue.
Yes. Oh, sorry. No, she had her
Sorry,
hand.
Councillor Barron, and then Councillor
Downey.
Downey, then Councillor Barron.
I wanted to make a motion that we move our meetings back to the town office chambers.
Seconder for that motion?
I'll second it for discussion. That was my question, actually. If we were to go back to chambers, does this stuff still need to be set up? Or the idea is that it would be set up and then left, or you could pop in and out to,
Through the chair to Councillor Barron. So the idea would be that if we move back into chambers, everything could be left static, that it could be, all the equipment could be set up and ready to go at a moment's notice.
Heading back.
Not interested in heading back until the ventilation system is properly updated. And I give some thought to the report from staff, and I think that one of the considerations that should be made is that we have funding that we can pay somebody, a contractor or whatever, to come in and set this up and take it down. We don't need to use our regular staff to do this. We have COVID funding to do that with. Because this is directly a result of COVID. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for COVID. So from that perspective, we can take that load off of them, because I appreciate it. Maybe 10 or 12 man hours every 2 weeks at least, which is a lot of other stuff not getting done, obviously. So I get that. So we could just take that away, that problem away. So then our consideration for moving doesn't include that labor component. We do have funds to take care of it, so why don't we do that? I mean, lift that load off and let them do their jobs that really moving furniture shouldn't be a priority for staff.
How about we table this discussion while staff finds out what the alternatives, like who could possibly do that work for us, come back to us, and then we'll make a decision at the next meeting.
Yeah, somebody knows how to do this kind of stuff, I'm sure.
All right, so we'll table this then. Do you need a motion for that, or is it clear that you'll be looking at who else, who you could bring in?
There was a motion on the floor
Oh, sorry. What was the motion? Thank you.
to relocate back to
Oh,
the,
sorry, yes, right.
Oh.
Move we table that motion.
Second.
Okay, everything's good. All in favor?
There, dealt with.
Okay, so the addendum, that was the McElhaney report from the McElhaney Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. So what you have before you here is a water conservation plan. And the recommendation is that we adopt this water conservation plan to go in, and it goes in as part of the grant application. Pleasure.
is this the one we just paid money for at the last meeting?
Clarify for us what this is. Okay, this is a different, yeah, it was, just one moment.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yeah, this basically this is required document, and it's buried in the tangible asset management plan that we actually have to have as a municipality for our water system. In trying to in applying for this grant for the water system upgrade, it was pointed out to us by McElhaney that this was really severely lacking. This is our water conservation plan, which is, just to be clear, part of the asset management plan. So this here has been updated and improved quite considerably in order to give us a better chance to secure the funding for this water project. It has to be adopted by council. For sure, that's a mandatory requirement from the grant application. So that's what we're requesting.
So you're bringing us into compliance with our asset management, something plan.
Well,
It's a
correct.
foundational document.
Yeah.
Whether we're
It
applying
is-
for the grant or not, we need this.
I beg your pardon?
Whether we're applying for the grant or not, we need this.
Correct. And then the bigger picture is the complete asset management plan
That was the
for the
word.
water system.
That would mean this is the document that we were asked to vote on last time, and
No.
No,
that was
this
a
is just the
financial
water
plan.
part of
This is
it.
The water part, the water conservation plan is a part of that.
oh,
Mhm.
Councillor Mitchell.
I like this, first of all. I think it's great that we start contemplating the state of our watershed and our relationship to it. And I want to know if there's anything in here, I didn't read every word, that talks about control of the watershed, contamination of the watershed, protection of the watershed? Or is this just usage of the watershed? I'm trying to figure that out because I think this opens up a bigger picture that we need to be concerned about.
We don't have a watershed, do we? We don't have a watershed.
The spring.
Yeah, it's not a
This is-
watershed.
This is our usage of the watershed, right? How are the waters going out after we collect them? But it's water management. It's part of 15 years from now. Are we going to be paying for treatment equipment to take glyphosates out of our water because of what's been dumped on the ground for the previous 25 years? So is there anything in there that talks about protecting our water?
To our public works manager.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Councillor Mitchell, and that is that this is focused much more on the conservation and the usage of our water, not necessarily the protection of our water system. When applying for the grants, the government's definitely looking for some kind of proactive way that the government, the municipal government, is actually controlling the usage of the water.
Right.
The TAMP report, which is required, which is the larger all-encompassing asset management plan, then will speak to the actual protection of the watersheds in further detail. It's a much more comprehensive document.
Okay. Good. I'm in favor of this.
Right, so then a motion for the town to adopt the water. Oh, before we make that motion, sorry, there's two suggestions I'd like to make if it is adopted. 1.4 on page 2 of this document. It says here, the town has a relatively small staff, so Julian will take on much. I would prefer it sound more professional that says the public works manager. And on page 3, where it says community snapshot, it has old census data. And I think though that's important, the new census data supports what they're saying in here and should be included as well. Okay. So with those two amendments, going to McElhaney to adjust there, can I have a motion that the town adopt the attached water conservation plan?
I'm with that.
Seconded, all in favor? Carried.
A comment though, I don't know if you guys looked at the chart on page 6, annual water usage, and it's trending downwards. And I thought, I thought one of two reasons. One, because our population from the 1990s has dropped significantly because we have full houses but smaller households. And then the other side is also in the latter years a concerted effort by Public Works to address fugitive water. So it's the graph's going in the right way.
And all the work people are doing on their houses when they've got water lines that are leaking into the ground by replacing all the 40, 50-year-old water lines.
Upgrading toilets, having
Yeah.
showers that have restrictors on them, all those things.
Yeah.
add up.
Yeah, that's a good chart.
Okay, so there are no items from in camera to be made public. Can I have a motion, please, to go in camera under Community Charter Section 91K and also 91A?
I'll move.
Moved to seconded. In favor? Carried. There are no public and no media, so motion to adjourn and go in camera.
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Finish.